This is the Retirement Solution Podcast with financial advisor John Hicks, founder of J. Hagan Capital.
Glad to have you here with us on the Retirement Solution alongside financial advisor John Hicks. I'm Heather Branch, here to ask for John's insight on answers to questions that so many of us have. Because truth be told, when it comes to figuring out our retirement plan, comes to figure out most things when it comes to finances in this day and age, there are just so many questions because there's so many things we're responsible for nowadays. Lots of stuff to figure out by ourselves. Also, there's just a lot of opportunity for people to DIY things.
He got complicated. I mean, it did, right?
Heck?
So
when did that happen?
He got complicated.
Yeah.
Well, I can remember when we went from 3 or 4 total stations on television because I didn't have cable growing up,
Right.
So I had like Fox, CBS, ABC, and NBC. That's kind of it, other than PBS, right? So we had 4 stations, and so there's only 4 outlets to look at stuff. People that had opinions, whether they were good or bad or up or down. And now you cannot do a Google search without coming up with 844 zillion things, and you don't know who wrote them, if there's any accuracy, does it make any sense? But man, it's all clickbait. Heather, it's clickbait.
There's a
It's
lot
like,
of
you can
options.
retire tomorrow with 10 cents and 1 shoelace. It's like, you can do what? I'm interested. I'm like,
Right.
has someone figured something? Is one of these millennials that I'm always
what's behind that headline. Click. And it worked. Like the click.
It's like you can MacGyver your own retirement with some chewed up chewing gum, a shoelace, and half a bottle of antacids. And I'm like, you can do what? That is amazing. You don't even need money. But I mean, there's all this stuff, right? There was so we have this small screen porch on the house. And I love it out there, but it doesn't have AC. The fan doesn't really work well. We probably just need to replace the fan. But I was looking for one of my friends who lives out in Arizona. He said, John, we got swamp coolers. And I'm like, swamp cooler? What's a swamp cooler? He said, okay, it's real crazy. So it's basically a big fan, but it has these 2 things of ice things, like I don't know, like you put in an igloo cooler,
right?
Like 2 ice bars. You put those in there and you fill it with water, and the fan cools itself and cools the whole room just because of a couple things of ice. He said it's dirt cheap to operate. You don't have to put in duct systems and all this stuff. And I'm like, this is crazy. So what do I do? I go onto the Google machine and I start typing in swamp coolers. And man, there's these things that pop out. This 7-year-old in Lithuania came up with a way for the world's greatest swamp cooler to be and it's like, and it's only $99. And I'm like, man, this is great. This little swamp cooler, and it does like a whole room. Well, then you look at the reviews. Some of them are like, this company sells this straight from mainland China. It's got 4 buttons on it and only 3 are connected. The rest just come in the box. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, whatever. So then I go to Amazon and look at swamp coolers. The point is, would it work? Maybe. Am I willing to invest the money in this? And by the way, they're not little. They're huge.
They're huge, right?
It's like some huge contraption.
It's a big thing, yeah.
And the biggest thing was, I was like, it's great if you're outdoors, but if you're indoors, it's really a lot of noise. And I'm starting to think, I do not want to MacGyver this situation. I probably just need to have an actual licensed contractor come put up a new ceiling fan. And that'll probably fix the issue.
That's right.
Now, that'll cost hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and any more, getting a skilled contractor may cost $1,000 to put a fan in.
But at least you won't have first wasted the $100 on the thing that won't work, and then now you got to figure out how to get rid of that huge thing, and you're already a couple $100 in, and now you still have to call the contractor to put the fan up.
That is literally it. So
the lesson we're learning is don't take shortcuts.
Make sure it's a legitimate shortcut.
Right. There's that. But also, you brought up a very good point about the whole thing about online reviews.
Oh, yeah. Oh, big deal.
Because don't believe everything you read. FYI, everything on the internet's not true.
It was on the internet.
FYI.
It's got to be true.
Everything on the internet's not
But my
true.
grandkid said something about that. My grandkid's friend's sister mentioned about it. It was right after a cat video. They said that this is totally legitimate. I hear people, but you'd be surprised how many people tell me, but my grandson's friend from trade school said this. And I'm like, if it's something about his trade, I bet he's dead on. If it's about finances, maybe we get a little bit more research, maybe from like Vanguard or, maybe someone, Fidelity, Schwab, someone like that. Maybe.
Let's talk about the idea of reviews and how we use them. Because I don't know about you, but especially if I'm in a different neighborhood, if I'm out of town, or if I'm looking for a restaurant or something, I look on the reviews and I want to see.
Absolutely.
But especially when you're in a foreign city or state or country, sometimes you will walk into restaurants despite the good reviews and something will happen and you think to yourself, I think maybe something is off. Yeah. Maybe we should go to the McDonald's across the street because that seems like a safer bet than whatever is happening here. BuzzFeed did a list of the red flags that indicate you should not eat at a restaurant, and a couple of them were if you notice your feet sticking to the floor, like the.
That's a good one. Yeah.
If there's a sour, but a disinfectant smell, like that shouldn't trigger you. Like, oh, it smells clean. It's like, no, there's more going on there. When the menus appear to have never been cleaned, because if they can't wipe down the menus, what else are they not wiping down?
That's one I hadn't thought about, but that would be pretty grotesque when you think about it. So what I typically find is that, especially when I'm traveling in the Caribbean, and by the way, when I couldn't get down there, I was the most aggravated human being alive. There is something about an island life, and it's maybe just because I listen to too much Kenny Chesney radio or whatever.
Can't blame you.
But, there's just something about being down there. People just, they're different.
Slower.
It's very genteel. It's cool. They're going to have a beer. They're going to get under the sunshine. They're going to do something that doesn't require a lot of effort. And it just chills. But I tell you, I have been to more places, and it's hard to find. Like, you can talk to locals, and locals will tell you where you'll probably get the best food ever.
Okay.
But are you going to be comfortable eating it, right? Because some of their systems are set up differently than ours. And for me, I know, just like when I go to Mexico, I do not drink water.
That's right.
From the roadside stands. Yeah. Don't do it. It'll be a bottle. Make sure that you got to crack your own cap. Same thing here. So I remember going to a place, and it was referred by one of the locals, and they said, John, this is the best like jerk style food you're ever going to find in the world. So I go there, and it's really cool. It's kind of mostly outdoor. It overlooked like the bay. It was gorgeous. And I noticed, there's all these little goats, like little cute fainting, like, just all over the place, like not just there, but like all over the hillside. And we get in there, and they have this big fish menu and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, this is awesome. This is going to be incredible. And I sit down, and I'm like, hey, so, what's your all special? What are you known for? What do people come all over the place for? Here's the local. I don't know if you know. I'm like, oh my gosh, he comes in all the time. I'm like, yeah. What would he like? And like, oh, our goat curry is one of the best in the islands. And I was just like,
you weren't okay.
Wow.
You weren't ready.
I was not prepared for that.
You were not ready for the cute little goat on the hillside to be dinner. Oh no.
I was not prepared for that. So that threw me off. We ended up eating there, but I got fish.
I was going to say, I got shrimp for me.
I was like, what was the fish that you got in this morning? What are you guys in for? It's like, oh, mahi. Yes.
Sure.
Bring it on. Bring it on. Yeah. So that was a little disconcerting. And there's all kinds of those places where you walk in and you're just like, wow, I don't know that they have an FDA or whatever. I'm pretty certain that what we're eating was never refrigerated.
It's authentic.
It's for real. So that when I was in Costa Rica, same thing. Everything I thought there was a possibility.
Yeah.
That it could have been down below my apartment unit.
Especially when you're traveling internationally. Better to be safe than sorry, literally every time.
Because I've been sick once on a Mexican excursion.
Once is enough.
And I lived in India for nearly 7 months, and I never got sick in India. Never once. Everyone else did on the trip.
Because you made good choices.
I took two big suitcases. The second one, which was almost like Kevlar. Yeah. It was just like, well, if everything goes wrong, I can at least hide my suitcase. But it was full of peanut butter and beef jerky.
Got it.
Like my parents were just like, listen, what do you really want to take with you? And I'm just like, I really need to make sure that I can get some protein because, most Indian people, it's vegetarian based. Yeah. A lot of beans, a lot of vegetables, and all that kind of stuff. And that's probably good, but I don't know if I'm going to like the seasoning. So I took an entire suitcase of beef jerky.
You had a plan. And man with a plan.
And it worked. It did.
That's what I'm talking about. So
you got to have a plan. But just like when you go into a restaurant, you're just kind of wondering, what are those things that just stick out and they're glaring errors or whatever. I do something similar, though, when I'm looking at someone's retirement portfolio. When I come in and we're looking at their stuff, there's a handful of things that I can look at pretty quickly. I actually wrote them down because these are those things that when I'm thinking about, it's really kind of poignant. But if you kind of think about the average person, they come in, they kind of want to go in and they kind of want to see what I have to say.
Sure.
Well, that's
fine.
Why they're there. Yeah, that's great. But like my question is, yeah. But what do you want to achieve? Like, what are your objectives? Do you have a defined objective? And most people, I was surprised, especially when they're thinking about retirement, they kind of don't have clear objectives. And I'm like, yeah, but like, if you could retire tomorrow, would you want me to find a way to make that happen?
Okay.
Or do you know for a fact you would be happy to work for at least 2 more years so you can turn on your Social Security, la, 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 la. And then at that point, then you want to do it. And when they don't have clear objectives, the problem is the answers of how to achieve their goals, They're very difficult, right? So if you don't have written objectives, you need to work with your advisor. You need to call my team and figure out exactly what you want to achieve. Because I promise you one thing, just like the most successful people in the world, they always have clear, achievable objectives. And they have the standard often very high. Every one of our clients can do that. Every one of the people that get a chance to retire, you can do that, and I suggest you do. Okay. Written, clear objectives on what you want to do.
Okay.
The second thing I can see, and it's kind of like one of those things where an alarm kind of bell goes off, is if they don't have a realistic spending standard in retirement. They're not being realistic. They're like, well, John, I make $180,000 household right now, but when we retire, I know we can live off $50,000. I was like, well, unless you're saving the majority of that $180,000 now, you're going to have about, $130,000 less money. Are you sure you can do that? Number one. And then number two, why would you want to do that?
Right.
That's my second thing.
Yeah.
So when they don't have clear spending objectives, it makes me nervous because there's a bazillion things that can go wrong if they basically think they can spend $50,000, but they really need 80. And if we solve for 80, then they can know they can spend less if they want.
Right.
But they really need to know their expenses.
Better to have too much than too little.
Absolutely. And then the two last ones real quick. If they have way too much risk, because guys, I'm not going to lie to you. The way that you get wealthy in the stock market is to take extra risks when you can afford to take them. Yeah. And so what gets us this big old pile of money is a very different mechanism than what we have to do to make sure we preserve it at that point in time, right? So you typically are rewarded for risk when we're working and we don't need the money. But that exact same amount of risk will destroy us if we have a very bad period. It doesn't take a long time. Yeah. You can have 2 bad years in a row and you can wipe out the majority of your ability to retire if you have that kind of risk. Yeah. So you have to downsize, you have to downplay risk when we need that money to live off of, because it can do one of two things. It can often grow more or it can give us an income. And when it comes to retirement or the ability to live independently, we would rather have the income than the growth. For sure, we want to grow, but you got to be realistic. If you have to prioritize one of the two when we get closer to retirement, it should be income over growth. Okay. And then lastly, if we don't have a tax plan, because Uncle Sam is going to take 20 to 50% of everything you got. And if you do it wrong, or tax rates go up, or guys, that's a travesty. You're going to give a lot more of your money that you've worked hard for to the government. So, but those 4 are the big ones when you kind of think of the things that kind of make me go, maybe I don't want baby goat tonight.
Oh, sorry about the restaurant trauma. We've all been there. But when it comes to retirement, that is something we want zero trauma in, especially when it comes to our financial plan. So what red flags might be flying high in your savings plan? Let's get to work uncovering what those are and working to help you find solutions to those areas, ensuring that you don't run into red flag situations in these years when you shouldn't be worrying about that stuff. This is what John and his team are here to help you figure out. You can find us, retirementsolutionradio.com, to start that conversation about your retirement savings plans. We also have links posted in the show notes, so you can just click there, or again, go to retirementsolutionradio.com.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Solution Podcast with John Hicks. Begin the conversation about your savings plan with John and the team at J. Hagan Capital by visiting retirementsolutionradio.com. Be sure to listen to John's radio show, The Retirement Solution, Saturdays at 8 a.m. and Sundays at 9 a.m. on News Radio 840 WHAS.
J. Hagan Capital Inc. is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if J. Hagan Capital Inc. is licensed in your state, please call 502-690-5635. J. Hagan Capital Inc. is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. It does not provide legal or tax advice. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through J. Hagan Capital. National license number 1882794.